Well, I want to welcome you to Viva Learning. I'm lecturing to you from a hotel room in Oak Brook, Illinois, where I'll be lecturing tomorrow for a lecture that I have already scheduled. So welcome, and let's get started. I'm Dr. Young from Loma Linda University, graduated in '85. My wife and I practiced dentistry together for 38 years. I direct the aesthetic program there, co-directed with Dr. Ryan Becker since I've been doing it since 2000. And honorarium today is provided by Carrari. That's a QR code for my links. If you want to take a screenshot of that, it'll direct you to Linktree. And with that, let's get started. What brought me here today is pure passion. This was never an intent of mine. I really wanted to be a drummer. That didn't work out with my parents. So I wanted to be a skier and own a ski shop. That didn't work out. And off to dental school I went. And I had a great group of mentors, Jim Dunn, Bertolotti, Fisher, Coyce, Spears. You know, many of those names, especially John Coyce and Spears. And so these were my early mentors. And I was very, very lucky. And then Dan Clementino later on in my career, one of the most knowledgeable guys in Adhesion, works for Carrari in their technical department. So that's my background. But Jim is who got me here because he taught me photography. I lectured on photography for quite a while, and I know a bit about that for sure. And so it's the photography really that has brought me here to talk to you about dentistry itself. And I started doing this type of lecturing in 2015. So direct injection molded restorations to super composites. Common issues with composites are post-op sensitivity in general, post-op pain on biting, leakage, staining, chipping, fracturing, recurrent decay. All these things have been a problem over the years. Is there anything we can do? I'd say yes. We need to take a careful look at adhesion. We need to look at injection molding as a possible help and engineering. But simply said, if you did nothing else, use gold standard bonds because a bond is really what is your interface, and follow the directions of the materials, because nationwide, international wide, we find that the average scrub time for a bond is 5 to 8 seconds by dentists around the world. The directions on almost every bond I know say a minimum of 20 seconds or more. So I always use an egg timer at 20 seconds for my entire career. Never fudged on that. And I think if there was one key I could tell you, that's the one. So let's look at adhesion. Long before biomimetic dentistry came around and the name was coined by Pascal Magna, a good friend of mine, there was Ray Bertolotti fifth quarter seminars in Hawaii in '86. We needed a way to write our trips off to Hawaii. And we went and heard Ray for the first time and were introduced to Dr. Fusayama, the father of Total Etch, the father of the first dent and bond. And we were introduced to the company Carrari, which makes a lot of products that you use daily. You just don't realize it. And so that was a life-changing day for us in 1985-86. Because what did I learn that day fresh out of school? That you could etch a dentin. We were told you couldn't. That you could bond a dentin. We were told you couldn't. That post-op sensitive was history. It was a big problem in posterior composites. And we learned in '87 that you could bond about anything with a product called Panavia. So when you look at the history, deep margin elevation for me was done in '87 for the first time. Fragment attachments around '87, dual cure flowable with Bisfield 2B and a Paladin ring. This was a self-cure in the box area in 1990, rib-on reinforced in '91, Amidodent sealing in '92. And Starflow Opaque was introduced in '96. One of the statements, adhesion with less need for tooth reduction is a highly desirable shift away from tooth preparation for mechanical retention, was made by Ray Bertolotti back then. And so we started bonding everything. I was started with my wife in 1985-86 using New Bond. New Bond was the first product in the Carrari lineup. It was a self-cure product. And it had the MDP monomer in it, which is the number one greatest advancement in adhesive dentistry, but it was patented for many, many years, and so no one could add it. So our entire lineup goes right down that line. We went then to Photobond, on to LB2B, through SC Bond, SC Protect Bond, to the present bonds. So I've been with this company using their bond for 38 years. Hence, I've had a lot of experience with their products. And I can honestly say from my heart, we've never returned a product because it was bad and the failure rates just didn't exist. So it changed a lot for us. And a lot of the problems that everybody was having were solved by using their particular bond. So let's look at extreme bonding, 1988 to 2024, 86, 87. What do I do with this lady? She doesn't like her gold crown. Ray said, prep a veneer on it, have your lab opaque it, and bond it on with that magical stuff called Panavia. We black marketed it out of Hong Kong for $42.86. I said, what if I perf the gold? He goes, don't worry about it. The Panavia has this MDP monomer in it. It'll seal it. So we bonded that gold on with, it was tin plated gold. And that restoration is still on today. I can't get a photo of it. She's on the East Coast, but it's still in place today. We were looking at cat teeth like this. It has a crack. What do? We didn't know about chasing cracks, about ribbon reinforcing. What we did know is we could bond a top on that. So we bonded on feldspathic onlay with Panavia. This tooth was in her mouth until mid-2000s, and when she finally lost that tooth. And so that was back in the early years. 88, we started bonding our gold in and taking all the retention form out of the gold and tin plating it and bonding it in with Panavia. I bonded every gold restoration after that with Panavia and still do to this day. We'll do bonded gold. And those are some examples done in 1988 that are still on today, taken in 2022 and 2002. In 1998, a guy comes in with a broken tooth and he says, put it back in for me. I said, you got to be crazy. He goes, no, don't you have a way to bond that? Duct tape does everything. And so I said, well, I have photo bond. It's a dual care. Let's try it. So we put the root piece back down, bonded it, filled it with composite. And 6 years later, that's what it looked like. He showed up in 2003 and he says, do another composite on my other tooth that I broke on the other side. And so I looked at that and said, piece is still there. We held it together, took the amalgam out, started exploring the crack, pushing on it a little bit more, pushing on it a little bit more, and even a little bit more. And then I realized it's connected by the PDL. I don't have much seepage of tissue, of moisture. So I can use Photobond. How wet is wet? How dry is dry? A little moisture is not going to kill me. I can get that pretty dry. So we put in Photobond. It's a dual cure. So we push the piece back together. Today we would use SE Protect Bond with a dual cure activator. We pushed it back together and voila, we had a tooth in place. Now we could simply fill it in the traditional ways that we were doing. And this is resin coating. Long before I knew who Pascal or Alleman were, I hadn't met them. I hadn't heard them lecture. We filled it with APX that I was using for many years. And that's the end restorations. And this is what they looked like, the old one and the new one. And he passed away in 2015 with both of those teeth in place. His wife said he ate grape nuts and he liked them crunchy every morning for breakfast. So things happen. Fragments, I love. If I have a fragment and it's a clean bond, I'm going to bond it back on with a good bond. Then I'm going to do my restoration. I'm going to injection mold the composite, put a new top on this tooth, put it under compression, and I have a beautiful tooth with a shade that matches, and we have it in a compression dome environment. We'll do a cuspid guidance with it, doing a BioClear matrix on this case, injection, doing a lingual matrix, and injecting our interproximals and layering in to create our cuspal guidance to protect that bicuspid, and off we go. Fragments, 1 month ago. I love fragments. 4 doctors said, I don't need the fragments. You can throw them away. I'll put on composite. And she found us, not sure how, but it was a month ago. And I saw the pieces and I said, fantastic, we have what we need. And so we took those with bond only. This was SE Protect Bond that we used. And we put those fragments back. Perfect fit. She goes out the door. The tooth was always slightly longer than the other one. And we could adjust that if she'd like. And she's thrilled. This is now a month. And as you can understand, her smile was before, and this is her afterwards with her own tooth structure. So let's look at injection molding. I have a 14-year love affair with this concept. I met David Clark next to a lecture of mine in Vancouver, Canada. When I was lecturing on photography in 2010, I saw this matrix next door, and I said, I want one of those. I want to take it home. So he gave me a few of them in a little envelope, and I took them back to the office. That Monday morning, I had this tooth come in slated for extraction. I took that BioClear anterior matrix. I kind of figured out how it must work, drive it into the PDL, put a little hip there so I could wedge, and then I injected enamel and dentin, enamel from facial, dentin from lingual. Don't even know what composite I used. It could have been Herculite on the facial and APX on the posterior on the lingual. But I injected them both heated. I've been heating for years, and they bet in the middle, and we got an end result and have a tooth in place that's still into this day. Unfortunately, he's not able to come into the office anymore, but his wife confirms that's still there. So class threes, I absolutely love class threes with injection molding because they become a breeze. And with the new materials that we're going to introduce today, it'll even make it better. But that's what it looks like when you have a clear shaped form matrix. Then now you can just simply injection mold that into infinity margins, and you'll be defied to find where those restorations are. Or you have a break like this with an elderly patient, and I'm not a CERAC doctor, so I'm not milling in my office. But if I have a 3mm ferrule, I know that I can put that tooth back together because I have a matrix that I can contain material with. I can lock it in there and I can put a second one on, injection mold the whole thing. I used APX on this because I needed some bulletproof, built it up and trim it back with a 3mm ferrule that I've engaged for Pascal's research. We're good. And she's thrilled because she now has a tooth in her place. She doesn't care about the broken partials. She's 90 years old. She passed away at age 99. And that tooth was still there. Her daughter told me, of course, she couldn't bring him to the office anymore, but that tooth was still there in her mouth when she passed away. The 360 matrix and the black triangle matrices we use a lot. This is an interesting case. 2020, right before COVID in January, he broke it off at a meeting. He goes, can you somehow put this tooth back? And I said, I don't think I can put the tooth back, but we'll do something else. He was slated for all on fours the end of the year. So what we did is we took the triangle matrix. Basically, again, I have 3mm of ferrule. I'm going to try to ensconce that, build it up. It looks pretty crazy. Take it apart and polish it, work it out to get a tooth that now gives him a smile that he's thrilled with. Ironically, he hasn't been back in to get the all on fours. That's not splinted. It's just sitting there, and we'll see how long it goes. So we're in 2024 now, and that's his smile. That's all you see when he smiles. This is another tooth slated for 2 crowns. She doesn't come in except when she has to. Well, she had to here because she was leaving for a meeting. And so I thought, well, I've got what I need. I didn't even put a rubber dam on because I'm going to be doing something later. So I used a 360 veneer matrix, pushed it down deep into the PDL. That seals it off, put a flow there to lock it. Put the other one on and then injection monolithically in the composite of your choice. And usually a classic, not a dent and enamel composite, but a universal. And you'll get a nice blend, polish it out, shine it up, and out the door she goes. Well, guess what? That was done in 2019, maybe 18, and she still hasn't come in to do that other crown or this one. So do they last? I think so. This is circa March 4, 2024. Patient came in with this broken off. He said, fix it for me. Can you do that, or do I have to have it extracted? And I said, I think I can fix it. If you don't mind, I'd like to give it a try. I wanted to do something I hadn't done, and that was using a complete flowable. So I used Clearfill Majesty Flow A1. I know in Japan they use it a lot as a full buildup. I would use the new composite I'm going to introduce today instead, but I keep this only in A1 because it's my resin coating composite. So I want it in A1 always for light cure in deeper areas. I wish I'd had A5 or A4 or A35, but I didn't. But I said, it's not going to match. He goes, I don't care. So again, we used a 360-degree matrix, drove it in deep. I didn't put a rubber dam on this one. It was too difficult and it wasn't necessary. I could control the moisture, injected 100% flowable, polish it off, and send him out the door, and he's thrilled. Even though it doesn't match, it drives me crazy. But with A4 or A35, we would have been golden. The new material may have enough opacity to pull this one off, as you shall see later. Black triangles are another big area for injection molding, and the new material we're going to introduce is going to change this. This is what you call a spit triangle. When she has spit between the trees, she doesn't have a triangle, but when she goes to parties, it's hard to keep spit there all the time. And she lived in Newport Beach and said, I can't have this anymore because that's what it looks like when the spit's not there. And so we're going to fix that with black triangle closure. And this new material, we're doing photo analyzing with the polarization to pick our material we're going to inject. With this new material, this will not be necessary to do this, as you're going to see later. So we'll put our matrix, we size them, we fit them, and then we want to make sure that the enamel's super clean, so we put disclosing on. We bioblast, get rid of all the biofilm that's on the tooth, so we have really clean enamel, and then we'll set the matrices into our injection molding for the black triangle, as we'll have an example a little bit later. And so we take her from that to that, and changes her life, and she doesn't have to keep spit between her teeth anymore. So that's a big game changer for her. Diastema closures are also really nice with injection molding. When they're smaller, you can do a monolithic injection, as we did in this case. And so we simply fit the matrices, put a rubber dam on, inject both matrices are in, we inject one side, pull that matrix, and then inject the other side. I used a wedge in this case because she wasn't concerned about it being 100% closed, and because it's a diastema, we wanted to get a tighter contact. So you can use a hip technique, but we don't have time to talk about all the details on how we do these. But there's lots of stuff on the internet on this. And so that's what she looks like. She didn't want the other tooth adjusted for width. She just wanted that diastema closed. So she was really thrilled. So that's 2 years post-op and 4 years post-op 2 days ago. And so, as you can see, we get a really nice finish. So let's look at new products. We've got some interesting stuff to show you. And that's kind of why I'm here to give you this presentation. A new bond and a new flowable. So let's talk about these two products that I think are real game changers. We have Clearfill Majesty ES Flow Universal. Comes in universal shade and universal dark. Physical properties equivalent to a universal restorative composite. When you look at this, it's a one shade covers 16 betas. It has high viscosity, it's highly filled at 78%, physical properties of a universal restorative. It's excellent in handling, and it really holds its finish and its high gloss. It's got a really nice, highly filled product. You can see its indications for use are basically literally everywhere in the mouth. Including diastema closures, inlays, onlay cementations, tooth wear, tooth erosion, vertical openings. There's all kinds of things that you can use this material for. And its flexural strength is right up there with Clearfill APX. It's even a little bit higher than 3M's Filtech Supreme Ultra in the universal composites. So you can see where it falls with Omnichroma, Genial, Universal Injectables, and 3M. So really, really interesting material. You can see the shade range that the Universal does. It covers a lot. So when you look at it in posteriors, it basically, the U shade covers all the way through D4 and B4. You can see that visually there. In the class 3 or class 5 areas, we start bringing out the universal dark for those cervical areas. You can actually use it as an initial layer if you wanted, and then put the universal on top of that. I haven't experimented with that yet, but I think that'll work really nice because it's showing a little more opacity than we thought it would. So pretty exciting to have this. I was lucky enough to have the first cases done with this material, so I'm getting pretty familiar with it and have a few to show you. Universal Bond came out, Universal Bond Quick. Well, they've released Universal Bond Quick 2, which was released at the CDA meeting in California. Pretty amazing stuff if you're into one model bonds. And I have to say, it's a game changer. As many of you might already know, the amide monomer was developed once again, a patented product by Carrare that has changed the whole world of bonding because it is no waiting time. You don't have to air off the monomer, the HEMA that's in the bonds that you normally are working with. So your application time is no waiting. It has a strong bond layer. They've increased the bond strength and reduced the thickness with this new proprietary multifunctional monomer known as urethane tetramethacrylate. And then, of course, it has the greatest development of anything to do with bonding is the MDP monomer. And they're, of course, the original company that developed the MDP monomer. Now you see it in so many bonding products. So it's kind of a new super bond in a way when you look at a one bottle bond. Lower viscosity, it's easier to apply, it's strong, it's thin, and it gives you a really nice universal bond. It's ultra quick, no waiting time, and rapid adhesion. Think about that very first slide when I said scrub 20 seconds. Well, you have no waiting. Chemically compatible with Panavia SA Cement Universal and DC Core Plus, so it will cure with those products, and it has the original MDP adhesive monomer. There's no waiting time, as you can see in the application method. These are all the top one bottle bonds. So basically it becomes your decision. They all will work if done properly, but you do need to follow the directions. And I've talked to the chemists in many of these different companies, and they will tell you there wasn't intended fudge factors. When they say 20 seconds, they want 20 seconds or more. And most dentists rarely go more than 8 seconds scrubbing a bond. So I will tell you, to me, that is the biggest problem. So right now you have no waiting time on Clearfield Universal Bond. Quick, 3 to 5 micron film thickness, has a lot of great handling characteristics. So with this, you now almost have like a universal restorative system, the Clearfield Panavia Universal System, where you have a cementation through Panavia SA cement with the Clearfield Ceramic Primer Plus, combined with the, if you want to increase bond strength, you can go with the Universal Bond Quick 2 as an initial layer, and that will increase your bond strength even more. You've got your universal fill composite and flowable composite, and you've got post-cementation and core buildup, all in a system that's designed to work with each other. So it's about as simple as you can get it if you're trying to simplify your bonding protocols. Some of the materials we're going to be using the rest of the lecture is, you can see we've got bioblasters and Veloplex on the left. We need curing lights, we need heaters. Instruments, there's all kinds of instruments. We're not going to dwell or talk on that. Just some of my favorite things that I like to use are on that screen, but you have to have heating, you need to have clean enamel, and you have to have curing lights. So I use both the 3M and the Ultradent curing lights. I have one each in each operatory. I like both of them, and I like them in different situations. So they're both there. Matrix systems, these are the kind of the top ones and my favorites that I've used over the years. I predominantly use the clear matrices now. Garrison has their Strata G, which is my other favorite. But all of these matrices will get the job done, and with some of the techniques that we're going to show. But the one mix and match issue is you can't mix and match the rings, because the BioClear ring is designed to allow flow of material. The Garrison put on a clear matrix, you'll be just like a metal matrix, except you'll have a very smooth finish interproximal and a nice three-dimensional contour. So you could use it with the Garrison, but you're not going to get that wraparound flow that you'll get because of the way the ring is designed. When you look at adhesive systems, these are all top adhesives, gold standard bonds. We don't have time to talk about that, but that Van Meerbeek's research, when he defined that term, it was pretty much Optibond FL and Clearfill SE Protect and SE Bond would be what they would consider the gold standard bonds. But all these bonds are being used heavily on this page and can work in this systems. Composites as well. Almost any composite will work with what I'm going to show you, because all composites can be heated. 3M put theirs through FDA approval is the big difference on theirs and their depth of cures. But you just check your composites. I will be focusing predominantly on the system on the left, and as we move forward. So this is the first restoration I did with the universal flow. We used Teflon tape. Patient didn't want us to use rubber dam. In this case, we were perfectly fine using Teflon. We can control the moisture. We selectively etched, put in UBQ2 with the flow universal, and got a nice result. We're still a little bit dehydrated in that tooth. This is the media post-op. And right then and there, I knew, oh, this is going to be a neat material. This was the next restoration I did with it about 3 weeks ago, right before CDA. Just an abfraction at the gum line. She was getting a little bit of sensitivity. So we did selective etch, UBQ2, ready to go with our bond is in. And you can see that cuspid there in the left of the screen. Really nice results, still a little dehydrated. The polish is beautiful on it. It's hard to detect where it is. And so in class fives, a lot of you that are nervous about class fives, these things popping out, right protocols or right bonds, that restoration is not going to pop out, period. I know the products well, and the UBQ2 is no different. So we're going to use another restoration here. We're going to use a BioClear matrix to do kind of a combo case. So this has got two lingual composites. So we're basically, he's not interested in the black triangle. That's not what he came in for. We have two broken down lingual composites. So we've disassembled things from the front, and this is what it looks like from the back. I am going to mention one thing. When you look at the lingual line angles, you'll see in the video that I talk about running composite up that lingual line angle. That's when you're injecting anything injecting from the facial, you need to put a little bit on the lingual first. In this case, we're going to catch the class threes, the incisal, that line angle, the black triangle, all in one. So we went with the red matrix in this case because this was not a triangle closure. We're going to keep it sort of natural. The papilla will a good chance it might climb up in there, but I could have gone up one, but I didn't want to in this case. And so the matrices are in place. That's the view from the lingual. We're going to total etch. Now, the next step, we have to get bond in. We've got a class 3. We need to scrub that bond. So keep in mind, any other bond you use, you're going to if it's a 2 bottle with a primer and a bond, you're going to have to scrub the primer for 20 seconds inside these matrices, and you're going to have to scrub the bond for 20 seconds inside these matrices. No matter what bond you use, if it's a 1 bottle bond, you still have to scrub the system 20 seconds. So you'll now understand why this bond in my world is standing out head and shoulders above everything, because it's immediate contact bonding. So let's look at this primitive video that I shot in the last minute, just to have something. So this is a class 3. We're ready to put the bond on. We've etched. So as we see it, we're going to scrub the bond in. We don't have to scrub. We just have to get it on the restoration. So we're getting it where we need it, using a micro brush to get it into the class 3s. And now we're going to gently air it very lightly. And now we're going to cure it. We're now going to put another coat of surfactant on of the same bond, but we are not going to cure it. This allows the flow of the material, and a key thing for injection molding. Now comes the flowable. Lingual wall first. Remember I told you, even if you weren't doing the class 3s, you bring it up the lingual wall if you watch in the mirror. Now I'm going over to the other side. I'm coming up the lingual wall and getting the class 3. I did that as well. Now we're going to come across to the other side, and we're going to inject that sector. Now you can see the facial injection molding. Now, we're not using a filled composite, as you can notice. This has enough fill that the hydraulics drives it where I need it. So we can deep into if we bury into the flow and pull back, we can do that without a void. We can come in from the lingual if we need to. We prefer not to do that, but if you have to, it's okay, as long as you don't incorporate a bubble by going deep in when you start. We aren't going to have to move or sculpt this, even though you're going to see me take an instrument and do that on the lingual. There's really no need to, because we don't have a filled composite. So now we're going to cure and pull the matrix. So we'll just loosen the matrix up, pull that out. And then you'll see in the next, so everything's removed, and that's what we have. And so what you have is a monolithic material that has enough hydraulics as a flowable, acts like a filled composite in wear factors and polish, that we can use for all of these anterior cases. And the beauty of this is, if you look at the match on this, this is a 1-shade material. So we're going to pull the proximal colors. So this is why I'm so excited about this particular material, because it has enough filler in it to have the hydraulics that I'm looking for. So I don't feel I need to chase it with a filled composite. So we'll simply polish this out. That's the view from the lingual. You can see the line angle where the flow is, and we did close the triangle some, got the incisal edge. That's immediate post-op, and then it's starting to rehydrate, and in a moment we'll have full rehydration, almost there, and you can see how the blend is really perfect. We may get a closure on that triangle as well. So let's look at incisal. This patient hadn't been in 5 years. Came in with feeling like he had a hole in his cuspid. He did have some decay, so we took that out. We selectively etched and put a bead of flowable around the rim of that. And as I was going to inject the rest, I wanted to see about the ice cream coating on this material. And I'll tell you what, that's uncured. I could have gone higher with that cone. So all of a sudden, my imagination runs wild of what you can do with this material because it stays stable right there. So it's kind of cool. We polished it off, dissed it down, cleaned it all up, and we have a really nice incisal guidance back, caught the edge of number 7. So really interesting, actually, number 10. So it's interesting how this stuff works. I think it's going to be, sorry, that is 6 and 7. This is going to be pretty exciting, shows it in an incisal wear area. Now, let's shift gears a little bit. We're going to go into the posterior. Let's talk about engineering. We want to talk about a calla lily prep. David Clark coined the term the calla lily prep. And what this is rethinking how we do our posterior composites. If you look at this radius bevel that he'll talk about, when you have where any restoration ends against the enamel, as it breaks down, you get a tension joint. So people talk about putting a bevel on. Does that really do anything? You can still get a tension joint there. What if we radius beveled this like we did with gold in the Tucker Study Club gold days and radiused it up to the incisal edge? Will we now put this into compression versus tension? The answer is yes. They did. If you look at a cathedral, why is this cathedral standing? Because those domes, everything is in compression, not tension. So they did a study with finite element analysis to kind of view this and look at this and see how and what actually happens. So when you look at cyclic fatigue, when we chew and chew and chew and chew over time on a restoration and it breaks down and a patient comes in and says, I broke my tooth eating ice cream or just a piece of soft bread, you say, well, how did you do that? Well, we understand that's called cyclic fatigue. And so when you look at the restoration on the right, it's a classic GB Black prep that you see all the time. That could be composite or amalgam. If you get a breakdown at that line angle edge where it ends to the tooth, a little bit of breakdown of that surface, you have an area of fatigue or tension. Now on the other side, we radius beveled. So we're going to put this through a chewing cycle, simulating cyclical fatigue over time of chewing 20, 30 years. Watch the right. The right has already fractured. Now, watch the left side. The interesting thing on this is what actually fails. What fractures? Is it the tooth? Well, that's interesting. Let's see. It's still going. What actually fatigues is the material, not the tooth. Why? Because the tooth was in compression versus tension on the right. So when you look at that and you think about that, if we look at cyclical fatigue, it is real. This is an amalgam that came into my practice. He'd never been to our office. That had been in 40 years. Now, think if you'd have gotten this 10 years earlier, you'd seen the margins broken down and you took it out and you put in a composite with a calla lily prep or a radius bevel on that occlusal and put in a simple composite. Would this have happened? I have to say no, because we wouldn't have had any tension joints. Instead, we got a severe fracture, catastrophic fracture. He has 32 teeth, and he wouldn't let us restore this. I wanted to do an interesting procedure, but he said, no, just pull it out. I think this could have been saved 10 or 12 years ago by replacing that amalgam and changing the prep thought and design. So with this, let's look at the 21st century injected molded composite restorations, the super composites. All right, we're going to look at these different matrix systems. We can use most of them, but I want to start with the single most important concept in modern dentistry. One of my favorite research terms was the adhesive equation. If the bonds can withstand the stress, the restorative technique will be successful. This is the single most important concept in modern dentistry. That was by Unterbrink and Liebenberg in '99. And I always remember that. And out of that was the concept that imidodent sealing resin coating does probably more for the tooth than anything we can do in stress reduction protocols and significantly helping the tooth in a lot of ways. So to me, the most important thing in modern dentistry is a combination of IDS and resin coating to create our restorations to be even better. So what is resin coating? We'll talk about that in a moment, but it's going to give us stress reduction protocols and pulp protection in the process. So let's take a tooth and let's restore it. We're going to take Katana Cleaner. If you don't have air abrasion, Katana Cleaner is certainly the next best thing. It's got an active MVP salt in it. It is made by Carrari. It's a mild tooth and restoration cleaner, cleans blood and saliva. So we've prepped this tooth. We're going to clean it with Katana first just to show you what it does. You'll see there's a bit of schmutz on that tooth. And we're going to go in and just get that all cleaned up, scrub it around, and you can clean your inside of your zirconia crowns is what it was designed for, and your restoration. It can clean all kinds of things. So now you can see how nice and clean that tooth is just with that. But what you really need to be doing is biofilm removal. And biofilm is a big problem when you're doing injection molding because you're bonding to infinity on enamel. So we want super clean enamel. So like taking paint on a house off to get the old paint away so we can get a good bond of our new paint, we need to get biofilm off the tooth. We use a product called aluminum trihydroxide. It's the hardness of dentin. It's right there with dentin. Enamel is apatite. If you look at your typical air abrasions, aluminum oxides, they're up with corundum right under diamond. You're going to cut dentin and enamel, so you don't want to use that. If you did, you'd have to use it very lightly from a distance. But with the aluminum trihydroxide, you can go at it nice and hard, and it really cleans beautifully. So we're going to use either the BioBlaster, or if you want to buy the Cadillac, the Veloplex, because you can have other solutions. It has two different system tanks. So you can have both aluminum trihydroxide, and then on the other side, you could have your aluminum oxide for prepping teeth. So it's a really nice unit. We're going to scrub on a disclosing agent. This is a two-color disclosing agent. BioClear happens to make this one. And you can coat the tooth with it, get it on there so that you'll be able to see. And then we rinse it away. Sorry, I have the sound going. That was not good. So we'll get this done here in a moment. Turn the volume down. So you can see the BioBlaster doing its thing. We've cleaned away all of that stain that we put on there, the disclosing solution. So now we have a super clean tooth. We're ready to bond to this. All right. Now, let's look at immediate dent sealing resin coating. 3 articles that were landmark research. Pashley in '92 first talked about IDS, and then Tagami in 2003 and Ascomagna in 2005. The landmark article that everybody refers to is the Tagami article. If indirect restorations are selected, a resin coating consisting of a dent bond system or full resin composite should be applied to the dent surface to improve the bond strength and of the resin cement to dentin. Well, we're now applying this to our composites, but we've been doing that for a long time with stress-reduced protocols back in '91 with Bisfill 2B and directed shrinkage and those kinds of concepts. There's another phase that a lot of people don't realize, that there's thermal insulation of the pulp as well when you do the resin coating. It significantly demonstrates that, especially when you're coming in with your curing light. And this was a research done in 2003. So you're getting protection of the pulp thermally as well from your light curing and all of that. So you get a double whammy there. The bonds you can use just about any bond you want, is following the directions. So in this case, we're going to use SC Protect. You could use Optibond. Those are kind of the gold standard bonds that you see on the screen from Van Meerbeek's research. So we're ready to do our bonding. So we're going to use SC Protect in this case with selective etch. So I'm going to go in with selective etch. Notice I don't have the rings on yet because this is a big composite with stress reduction protocols. I need to get really good bonding. So the ring might pinch down where I don't want it. Now I'm going in with the primer, 20 seconds. This is a self-etching primer in SC Protect. So you've got to go 20 seconds. Then we're going to gently evaporate till it quits moving to evaporate off the HEMA. Now we're coming in with our bond and scrubbing that for 20 seconds, especially in the dentin areas. Once that's done, we're going to just gently air that thin. And now we basically, when we cure this, we've done immediate dent and sealing, which is just simply applying a bond. So whatever your directions are for the bond, follow them explicitly. So with UBQ2, you would just basically do your either selective etch or total etch, because it can handle either direction. You would apply that bond and just gently air it and go. We're ready to do the resin coating and dent and replacement, and that's going to be the first resin coat is a 0.5 millimeter is ideal, 80 to 500 microns. That's why when Optibond FL is used, 2 coats of Optibond FL is about 80 microns. So that's why that world, maybe the resin coating, in some cases you won't see that done. So with that, I only have 2 products I use, period. They don't change. For the resin coating, I use Clearfill Majesty Flow, posterior 81% filler, 10.5 modulus, and then I use APX for my dent and replacement in A2. That's it. Those never change no matter what other composite I play with or try. Those are my 4 IDS and resin coating. So we've cured our bond layer, and now we're ready to go with our flowable. So we check our bond, feels good everywhere. It's nice and smooth. You can just do it out of habit. So that's immediate dent and sealing, really. It's putting the bond on. So the flowable is going to go in, and in this case, this is very different. I'm going to go into the deep areas. I'm going to cover dentin, 0.5 millimeter, all of the dentin. Now, what's going to happen in the box? This matrix is designed with the way the wedges are designed. I'm going to actually go past the box. If I'm in enamel, the base of the box was beveled. If I'm in dentin, it is not. But here, this material handles like no other material I've worked with. It doesn't slump. So what I'm able to do is distribute it where I want very accurately. And it won't roll and creep over into the edge of my margin. In the traditional techniques, we put our flowable at that margin first, but this is an injection mold concept. It's different. I'm dragging the material right up to the edge of my box, but I'm not going and sealing the base of the matrix. We're going to continue to place this flowable because the first increments we're laying down is the 0.5 millimeter. But as we go to the areas we've already placed it in, then it's going to start becoming more of a dentin replacement, as well as smoothing out line angles for flow. Now, this is our dentin replacement if you need to put in a lot of dentin. Notice how it handles. APX handles like nothing else I've ever used. It's so fun to work with. You can place it, sculpt it, and it does exactly what you want. And then once you cure it, that's the dentin replacement. Now I'm going to continue with some more flow. I want a little more in the box. Essentially, what I'm setting up to do is to inject the enamel layer for this restoration. And as you think about this, I cannot imagine how I have more of a stress-reduced protocol than this, because you're going to see me come in one more time, and I'm going to run flowable right down to the edge. And now I'm ready to inject enamel. And you'll notice on the occlusal, if you look carefully, you'll see a radius bevel line, especially on the lingual, the higher part of the screen. You can see the radius bevel there, or the callally bevel. That's where we're going to finish to. All right, so we've placed the resin coating. We're going to release the matrices to make sure they're not stuck to the tooth. And we've done our immediate dent sealing, or the bonding. We've done our resin coat, and then we've added a dentin in a deep area, and then we finished out covering all of the dentin and creating a flow pattern ready to go. So in the next slide, we're going to injection mold the enamel layer. Every composite can be heated. If you have questions about it, there's more research than you can imagine. It is not wrong to heat composite. We've been heating it since the 80s and heated Ziploc bags. So we put the rings on now. Notice they're going to allow flow, the angle of these rings. We're going to use, in this case, I'm going to use Majesty Flow for my flow to chase with Filtech. You could use any fill composite you want, and practically, because we're going to get 3 points of cure. My curing is going to be no problem in this case. So with that, we're going to oppose the matrix, make sure that the rings haven't pulled it away from the contact. We're not burnishing it, we're opposing it, we're checking depth. Now a surfactant of bond is going to go down. Going to air it gently, and now comes our flow into each corner, and into that corner it's been heated. Now comes the fill into the box, and now the hydraulics start. You'll see it's going to drive around the lower corner of the matrix. You can see it flowing. We're going to drive it up into the box area, and as we come up and across, we're going to keep coming with it. And we're going to run out here in a minute. We've blown all the flowable out of there. Now we'll grab the other gun out of the heater. That's why a 2-gun heater is so important. We're going to grab it because this will cool down in 30 seconds if we don't get it going. Now you'll see the flow on the bottom coming around that matrix. And as we go, you'll see it's a wad. Now, when you get good at this, it's not going to be that much, but for this video, we did a little extra. The light's going to cure us, so we're not going to have time to start sculpting like you would normally do in the mouth. But now we're basically done. We're going to release, take the rings off, release the matrix, cure 3 points there. So now we're clearing buccal and lingual. And now we're ready to go to the polishing and finishing. We pulled the matrix. We're going to disc with a Softlex disc. We're going to put in some anatomy, but I'm going to keep it a little smoother. I want this tooth under compression. I don't want any tension joints. So we'll simply finish it out with a little bit of detail. We use a little bit more disking and Magic Mix polisher. And that's pretty much it. We're going to go in with the Jazz polisher, and I'm going to skip ahead. We're going to go in with the Jazz, 5 pounds of pressure, dry initially, and then water. Yeah, Rockstar is the one that BioClear makes. And when we get done, we're going to have a nice finished restoration that looks like that. Highly polished infinity margins. And this will rehydrate and you'll get a blend. So now let's take this to our new materials. We're going to use UBQ, Katana Cleaner, the Majesty Universal Flow, and My Majesty Flow. So we're going to prep this tooth so that it's a big amalgam for you, like we were taking out an amalgam. We're going to put a wedge in, like we were doing incipient. We're going to drop down through the mesial. We're going to expand it, enlarge it, come in. We're going to radius bevel with this occlusionator, sorry, that's a little early. Radius bevel the kit on the top. We're going to put in our Katana Cleaner, rinse that away. Now, you see selective etch, this system works that way. Or you can go total etch, whichever one you want to do. I did them both so you can see that. Now we're going to apply the bond, just get the bond on, air it thin. Now we're going to go in and put another little bit of flowable here for our resin coating. So I'm putting a little bit of that. So this will help for any shrinkage. We're going to put a little curb around the radius bevel that we put there. And now we're going to inject our flow, and we're going to inject the whole box and bring it up and shape the box, move it, cure that. Then I'm going to inject the rest of the restoration with the universal and cure that. Now, because we radius beveled this, margins on the buccal and the lingual and the occlusal, we got pretty good flow with the hydraulics from that material. So now we're going in and disking. We'll disc the occlusal down. You'll see the enamel showing up. So it tells us we're back to grade. And the Occlusionator Pro that you see on the screen, you're going to see it come up in a minute. Beautiful for putting in anatomy quickly. You might want to look at this. There we're doing the final finishing on that. And then we're going to polish it out in the system you saw with disking. So this is using a traditional metal matrix with a modified technique that gives us a flow basically and a single unit. So you can see the polish on this material. It's pretty amazing shine that we got on that for a universal, and that's the finish. And when you look at this rehydrated, that's what it looks like from the buccal, the lingual, and the occlusal. Monolithic, one color, one shade. It's blending better than any I've seen in the one shade products, to be honest. I didn't expect to see it look this good. So with that, let's drop in and do a couple cases and we'll be done. So let's take an occlusal. This was a couple weeks, not a pretty tooth. I had to take what I could get. I did put ribbon in that crack that you see, but I forgot to photograph it for you. We're going to radius bevel with that burr. The Comet 8833, Bassler makes one. There's a number of, Meisinger makes one. That's what we put the radius bevel on with. We're going to do our selective etch. We're going to do our bonding. I'm going to put down my Clearfield Majesty flow. And now what's interesting, I used the universal to put in triangular ridges for those of you who like to build your anatomy that way to see how did it do. It worked great. I was able to lay the anatomy in. There it is. There you can see I'm disking down the radius, and then it wasn't a pretty tooth, but you can see we changed our occlusion, make sure we're not in tension anywhere, and didn't take a post-op without all the tape on there, the occlusal paper, but you get the idea. And that's, again, just monolithic flow. So if we do a biomimetic approach, we'll disassemble this amalgam, and we're going to use the clear matrix. But what I did in this case, the ring was on, I built the box with a filled composite using the flowable at the base, injecting it, a little bead there, and then building in my interproximal wall, pressing that filled composite in there so I got a little bit of flow around the matrix. And then I took the ring off and went ahead and finished out the composite in the standard way that you might do it. So this is a sort of those people that like to build their interproximal walls first. The beauty of the clear matrix is you get a finish that you'll never get on metal. It'll be smoother than anything you've seen. And that's what it looks like on X-ray. Now in this one, we're going to do a two-stage, and this is our last case, and that'll give us some time to answer some questions that you might have. So this case, we're going to dismantle this tooth. We have some decay going on. So we'll do the interproximal reduction, move it, clean it. We're going to recontour the adjacent tooth, so I wasn't too concerned because of the way these shapes were. So we'll disc that up, get it all cleaned up, get our peripheral seal zone and the interproximal decay removal, put a bevel down there. So now we've set the BioClear matrix. It's their bicuspid matrix. You could use a Garrison here, do whatever you like. I'm going to injection mold this. So I'll put that in, I'll total etch and put my bond down. Now you can see my resin coating done with Majesty Flow. And now I injected with Universal, with everything else. I also put a bead. You're going to see the curb around the radius bevel there on the occlusal. So now you see that bead all the way around. That is a nice finish point. And it's also a curve when that material comes up into the occlusal, it'll hit that curve and come up, and it gives it sort of an injection hydraulics. So now we'll inject the Universal and that light cured, and that's basically what it looks like when we're ready to take it apart. But we have a different component here that you didn't see. We're now going to go to the facial. In the interproximal, I could reach the interproximal decay on the mesial from the facial. So I went in there and tunneled in and got all of that decay out. Now I slid another matrix, another bicuspid matrix in from the facial. And actually, this is a cuspid matrix that I slid in. I wedged from the lingual, and I did my class 5, the decay on that. Got that all cleaned up, and we're ready. We bioblasted the photography. It doesn't look like it's cleaned because that's a reflection coming off of the dentin. So at this point, we total etch, and now I put a curve on the facial around the class 5 there. Now I take my finger from the lingual and press that matrix against the tooth tight. I put my surfactant to bond in. You can actually see some of it on the outside of the matrix. And now we inject the Universal flowable again into the matrix. And that's what it looks like when it's done. You can see the finish on it. It's not a pretty tooth, but we've done a class 5, an MO from the facial, and a class 2 replacement. So when you look at it from the facial, immediately post-op, this was done 2 days ago, immediate post-op, that tissue is going to heal beautifully. He's, heavy coffee drinker and wine drinker. You can see that we put a new top on this tooth. So it's now under compression, this first buy. So we've got a compressive load on it. And so it should do quite well as well. So with that, I want to thank you for listening today. I hope you enjoyed it. I'm sure you have some questions. And I wanted to pique your interest in the fact that we've gotten some materials on the market now today that are kind of unusual and really lend themselves to the world that I love of injection molding and sort of the spins and the takes that I do on it. I tend to kind of go outside the box. So I think we're all done for today. We're going to move to question and answers. I think, see what kind of questions we have today. And I'm going to ask my Viva team to help me into the question and answer department. Here we go. So injection molding, are you bulk filling? If so, what type? So you're not using a bulk fill in the sense because you are curing from all directions. So you don't have to use a bulk fill. But all I will say is if you want to use a bulk fill composite, you certainly can do it. As long as you do immediate dent sealing and the resin coating, that solved all the problems with the shrinkage from bulk fill composites. But you could bulk fill with a composite as well. I mean, that's essentially 3Ms isn't really a bulk fill per se, but it's along that kind of a concept. But you honestly could use any material as long as you understand the injection concept, that you have a surfactant of a bond that's not cured after you've done your original bonding, and a flowable is done with the fills, so it kind of drives it forward. So can you please review the matrix systems? What are you using to build a very broken down teeth? Yes, really broken down. That was a 360-degree matrix by the BioClear. Would you love to know if you have any contacts in the Sandy area that injection molding composite restoration? I mean, I was getting it done for myself. I live in Riverside. My practice is in San Bernardino, right by Loma Linda University. If you had, in your last couple of slides, you noticed you didn't use the BioClear twin ring while building the proximal wall. I did use a twin ring when I built that proximal wall. I didn't put that slide in for lack of time. I said it in the presentation if you heard that. So the ring was on, but you could, in that particular technique that I did, you could have used a Garrison ring. You could have used anything because I was doing kind of an old school technique with the BioClear matrix, the clear matrix. So I think that's gotten the questions, a few of them. Who makes the plastic yellow wedges? That's all part of the BioClear system. I was too slow. Could you let me know the radius bevel burr? That's the Comet makes a burr block that has all those burrs on it. It's called the BioClear burr block, or you can get them from Brasseler. It's the Christmas tree burr, but Comet makes an actual kit. Genial already is a flowable material. Can it still be heated? Any composite can be heated. You just have to test your composites, but you can usually heat them for 2 minutes, no problem. But Genial, you may not, need to heat it. May have, but I wouldn't use Genial the way I was using this new universal composite in the box for posteriors. Are you able to build up fill, contour, broken cusps with this material? Absolutely. You saw I was building full teeth out of Majesty Flow, and this material should even be stronger than Majesty Flow. Concept, good question on that one. I haven't seen concept in a long time. Wow. I don't have an answer for you on that. So hopefully we got to most of your questions. Like in Omnichroma. No, so the blocker in Omnichroma, the only thing I could see is in a really dark, deep class 5, maybe if you use the U versus the UD, you might want to put a little blocker in, but I think in those where Omnichroma's blocker would be used, if you use the UD as your first initial layer, like you were resin coating it, and then use a universal, you're going to have the what you need without a blocker. But if you needed to use a blocker, you could use Majesty Flow in, say, an A2 A3 or an A1, whatever shape you needed on that. That could work as a blocker as well. So I think we got all the questions answered. I think we've got through them all. There's one more. What is the depth of cure of the new universal flow? I have not tested it. Dan Clementino asked that. Dan, I don't know the answer to that. But we'll find that out soon, I'm sure. I think we're done for today. I hope you all enjoyed it. And I'm going to say goodbye to all of you. And I hope you have a great evening wherever you are in the world.